Also, welcome to the Inland Valley Storytellers monthly story swap. I'm John St. Clair, your host and leader of this group, and right now there's only 3 of us here. Hopefully some more will join, but I think we'll go ahead and let Jean introduce herself and tell the first story.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry that we don't have a larger group, but maybe that will be just as well. We'll see how this story goes, and maybe I'll tell it again sometime. So I like to think of, I live in Riverside County, and I grew up in the area around Chicago in the northern suburbs. But my mother had a cottage that she inherited from her family, and that was in Wisconsin. As a child, I went to the cottage with my parents and my brother, and we were up there, I won't say every weekend in the summer, but a large number of them. And that worked out very well for the family because it gave us a place to go and get away from the rigors of suburban life in Illinois. And it also was a very pleasant area where we vacationed. And generally we just spent the weekends there. But when I think back of my summers in my childhood, I think a large amount of that time holds the best memories, some of the most enjoyable experiences. And I think that that's probably the case with a lot of people. When we look back at our childhood, I mean, people said, would you ever like to live it over again? And no, I really don't want to live it over again. I did it once. But when I think back of the times I spent with my family that were really positive and a lot of fun, I go think back to the cottage in Wisconsin. Now, my grandmother passed away, and the cottage went to my mother. And so we spent those days until I was about, I think I was about 12. And at that point, it was really obvious that my parents wanted to do something else with their time in the summer, and they wanted to take their kids to other locations to see the world. And the idea of trying to continue to maintain a cottage that they weren't going to be going to very often it sounded to be a little more than they wanted to deal with, primarily because they couldn't afford the taxes. It was a nice area, and most of the homes up there were owned by people who had been very affluent. But in earlier days, it was just a getaway for folks that would not be considered millionaires or whatever you want to call it. So my parents thought they're going to have to sell this cottage. Well, what we would do when we go up there on the weekends, Saturday night was always hot dog night. And actually that was hot dog night, whether we were in Illinois or if we were in Wisconsin, we would break out the hot dogs. Now, the cottage was above the lake by, I would say, maybe a quarter-mile walk. And that made it a little bit of a trek for my parents. My parents were older than most of my kids, most of my friends' parents. My folks waited until they were a whole lot older to have kids. And but still, we would have this hot dog roast, and it was desired by my mother. We have to go down to the lake to cook the hot dogs. Now, we had perfectly good equipment up at the top of the hill above the lake, and we could fix up hot dogs there just fine. But no, it was sort of a tradition. We're going to take them down to the lake. And I was a kid. That's fine. You know, I carried most of the stuff down and back up again. And that when I was young, I could handle that. But I think back to those times where we would be sitting there by the lake, and we would be talking about, the things we were going to do the next day, and maybe some things we were going to do the next week. And as the summers would get towards the end, we'd start talking about things like what we're going to do the next school year. My father was a professor, and so his school years were about the same as my brother's and mine. Well, at one point in this whole experience with the cottage, for the first, like I said, about 12 years of my life, they had a rowboat, a wooden rowboat. And this wooden rowboat was just horrible. Every time we'd want to go out in the rowboat, if it had been out of the lake for a while, have to put the boat in about 12 hours before you're actually going to use it, because the wood needed to swell, so you weren't spending the entire time bailing out the water from the many leaks that this thing had. Well, about the time that I was, I guess, about 10, maybe even a little younger than that, my father was fed up with this wooden rowboat. He went and bought a nice aluminum one, and that was great. Well, we had an aluminum rowboat, and now we have a wooden one. What on earth are we going to do with? And it's not like you can say, well, we'll just take it up to the road and maybe put a free sign on it, let anyone who wants it take it away. Well, that wasn't going to work, because it was a long way up. I mean, when I say it was about a quarter mile down to the lake where the rowboat was, that means it's a quarter mile up, and there wasn't any road. It was all pathway, and nobody wanted to carry this boat up there. So for the next couple of years, the last couple of years that we had the cottage, the rowboat had been put upside down, and it became the hot dog eating table. So the table didn't eat hot dogs, but I mean, it was where we put the condiments, and we put the buns, and we put all that stuff, was all sitting there on the overturned rowboat. And shortly after we started doing that, my folks decided that's a whole lot better than trying to bring down a table. So we just used the rowboat for that. Well, like I said, I was getting up there in years, and I graduated from elementary school. At the same time, not exactly the same time, but at that same time period of the year, my brother graduated high school. He was 6 years older than I am. In fact, he's still 6 years older than I am. And we often bemoan that fact. Anyway, he was going to be going on to college, and I was going into junior high, which didn't mean that I was now out of commission or anything, but it was a whole new world. I was going to have more homework. I was going to have more obligations. My brother was not going to be doing the things that he had been doing. All the babysitting he was going to be doing, he did normally, would end up on my shoulders. And that was okay. I could deal with that. So we were facing a lot of changes. At the same time, my parents are putting the cottage up for sale. But what do you do with the rowboat? It really doesn't help the sale of a place to have this old rowboat that just looks horrible. And so it was decided, and I don't know who decided it or if it was a group decision, we're going to burn the rowboat right there at the down at the lake. We're going to take this rowboat and set a match to it. And this was our last time there. We had packed up the hot dogs, and we're going to do some marshmallow roasting over a burning rowboat. And so that's what we did. We burned the rowboat. And I remember sitting there. I'd never really seen a bonfire before, and this is really pretty cool. It's not like where I live in California. We couldn't just say, I think I'm going to burn that rowboat in my backyard. It doesn't work that way, because out here, everything will catch on fire. We don't do that. But where we were, it was a very moist area, and there was no danger involved. And so we sat there watching the fire and doing our marshmallows. And I remember looking into that fire and realizing that this may be the last time. I may never be sitting by this lake again. I may never be having hot dogs with my family again. My brother's going to be in college, and I don't know what he was thinking, but I'm sure that his mind was at some place other than, oh, goody, goody, I can't wait to come back here, because he was really excited about going on with his life. And it was a memorable time, and it was a positive time, but it was also kind of sad. And I started to think about that as the next year started. I was in junior high school now. I'm big girl. This is going to be really cool. And I started to remember that wonderful last time at the cottage, thinking, oh man, I can't wait till summer so we can go to the cottage again. I used to be the one that complained about going there again. And I thought, maybe I could make this the best time ever. And I daydreamed about that a lot. I remember daydreaming about it in math class, which probably didn't help my grades any. But one of those days I came home and was talking to my mother, and she said, oh, well, there's a problem with that. We sold the cottage. And here's something that we were looking forward to doing and moving on with our lives. It also meant I was saying goodbye. And I think back at that bonfire, and it was fitting goodbye to the cottage. It was a good childhood, but I've moved on.
Right. Thank you.
Hi, Angela.
So she just sent a message. I'm listening
Yes,
off camera till 7:35.
Yeah, but I can say hello.
Okay.
That's all. Okay, so there's just 4 of us here.
Yeah, I was beginning to wonder if I put the wrong link in in the email, but I double checked. It's the right one.
Yeah,
That's disappointing, but
be a record of 4.
right. Well, you know, once back when we were doing live story swaps at the Claremont Forum, once we had only 3, me, Chris, and one other person. And actually that turned out to be okay, because this was a person fairly new to the group, and she got to know us and we got to know her, and she tried out several stories, and she had questions about storytelling, and for the 3 of us, it was just fine.
Yeah, it's nice when it works out like that. I mean, I've had performances in libraries where 2 people came.
Yeah.
You know, it was very sweet, or 3 children and a parent, you know.
Yeah.
But Jean, you're new to our group, right? You're sort of new.
Well, yes and no. I'm a returnee.
Yeah.
I had been involved with the Inland Storytellers a lot of years ago, and then I ended up getting into the whole make money teaching kind of thing, and that took over a lot of my life for a while.
Were you out of the state? Were you living out of state?
No, I'm Riverside County, Southern California. Been here for 30 some years.
Well, where were you teaching?
I'm sorry?
Where were you teaching?
Chafee. Mount San Jacinto, Riverside Community College, 3 campuses, Fullerton College, and Rancho Santiago, which was Santa Ana College at one point.
What was
I taught at San Bernardino Valley also.
What courses were you teaching?
Speech.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. I taught speech for about 13 years, and then I decided I was going to try something all new and different, and I went and got my doctorate in folklore. And so now I have a doctorate in something that nobody wants to hire me for, but that's okay, because I didn't get it for being hired. I got it because it's what I love to do, and because I'm a genealogist, and that kind of fits too. But I used to go to your concerts many, many, many times, and you were one of my husband's favorite storytellers ever.
Thank you.
And
He
Jean,
kept trying to make a washboard like yours, and he kept telling me, "Look, this is going to be like Angela." No, it's not. It's not like that.
No, you don't. You make one. It doesn't work if you try to make one like someone else's. It's like you just shut down the whole ball game when you do that. I call that driving by looking in the rear view mirror. Your foot is on the gas pedal, your car is moving forward, and your gaze is on the rear view mirror where you've been.
Like
This
that.
is not useful. It is not safe.
Yeah. And he realized it before too awfully long. He played Saw, and he thought that maybe some washboard along with it. And he did do some washboard stuff, but more of the conventional washboard. All of that.
Yeah, good. Well, one of my most successful Zoom events in 2020 was I taught a family building washboard workshop where parents and kids were coming together, came to the class together. And during the week in between sessions, they were testing out the sound of every single item in their kitchen drawers. So they got to know their kitchens in a new way.
Yeah, I always dreaded whenever we see a kitchen store and we ought to be out at maybe a mall or something, and Butch would go right in and start trying out the spoons. And I said, you can't just go into a store and start banging your spoons around. They don't like that.
Well,
but he was just as bad at a hardware store, because there he'd pick up a saw and start.
Yeah. I used to carry dental floss in my pocket so I could wrap it around drill bits and other things in hardware stores so I could hear the metal ring. Because if you touch it, it doesn't ring. So you have to hang it with a string and then hit it with like a screwdriver or another piece of metal. And then you can hear the bell sounds. So yeah. That's the old days.
So Angela, Jean used to go to the Folk Music Center when Dorothy was running the storytelling group.
I think I remember you writing that to us after you told us about Jean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you knew Dorothy. Yeah.
Dorothy Chase.
Oh, yes.
You were in the group when she started it.
I don't know if I was there at that point, but it was still relatively new, I think, when I joined.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember when she started it. And I wasn't there at the beginning, but she invited me to come one time and give feedback to the tellers. That's the first time I went. She asked if I'd come and listen and then offer some feedback to people, which was really fun.
Yeah, I think.
It was fun. It was good. So it's interesting to me that you were teaching speech in colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And did you send your students to storytelling things?
The public speaking students, I can't remember if I gave extra credit if they went to something like that, but I also taught oral interp at Mount San Jacinto and another place I can't remember. And yeah, I tried to get them to go to storytelling. And some took me up on it, but I taught at night at San Jacinto. And the attitude sometimes is, I'm putting in my time going to the class. I can't do any more. And I understand that, because people worked all day and now they're going to class at night. But I taught sometimes as many as 8 classes in a semester.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was kind of a draining sort of thing. And that's one of the reasons that I ended up having to cut back on a bunch of things. So storytelling was one of those things.
Yeah.
Genealogy was another. And so when I retired from teaching, I said, I'm going to do what I'd like to do. And that's tell stories and do my music more and that kind of thing.
Follow your heart's desire.
Yep.
Yeah, well, currently there's a teacher at RCC at the Norco satellite campus who teaches a storytelling class. And he used to teach public speaking and maybe still does, but he does have one storytelling class and he gives extra credit to students who participate in our group, and it's been nice. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes we get students to join us.
Yeah. What's his name?
Mark Lewis. And
But this is not
apparently,
the Mark Lewis that comes to my mind when I hear Mark Lewis.
Not
Yeah.
the Ren Fair guy.
yeah, there was a Mark Lewis that was a storyteller, a well-known storyteller long before, not the same one.
Yeah.
Mark W. Lewis is, and he's the
Has
past.
the teacher ever come to our group?
He once brought his mother and family to one of our spring concerts at the Friends meeting in Claremont,
Nice. Nice.
but he's never
Yeah.
come to a story swap. And he said he might try to come to some of our Zoom story swaps, but he never has.
Uh-huh. We might need to railroad him a little, rodeo him.
Yeah, I was hoping he would.
Well, if you give me his email, I'll rodeo him.
I
Because
might,
I live in Victorville, so he can't reach me.
yeah, well, I don't mind railroading. I'll send him a reminder that we're still doing this. He had a student that came 3 months ago. She came twice, I think, but hasn't come since. And she told stories. She just didn't come to just listen.
Why don't we give him a nudge and invite his students to come to do a little slam, a little student slam at our May meeting.
Okay, I'll suggest that to him.
They'll have a month to get ready.
Right. And I don't know whether this semester or quarter or whatever system they're on, if he's doing a storytelling class, but I certainly can run it by him and see.
Yeah, and if this Tuesday moment is not a good moment for him, maybe he could find another moment, and maybe we could go on Zoom.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
We could join them.
mhm.
You know, I am a girl full of ideas for other people's lives. Ay, ay, ay. Well, well, did you ever meet our colleague Milbree Birch in Pasadena?
Mhm.
She moved from here in the 90s.
Yeah. I do.
She
I
used
love
to
it.
always say, get your boohoos out before you'd go to the stage.
That's
So-
a very, very good piece of advice. And,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard similar things from folks that have,
Yeah.
like written dedicatory pieces and then just found out that they were going to pieces when they tried to share them.
Yeah. I shared a song a week ago, Monday, at a swap on Zoom, and I could not get through it without weeping. It was a Woody Guthrie song, a peace song called
Mhm.
Peace Call that they found in his songbooks from the 60s and
Mhm.
early 70s. I could not, I couldn't, I was so surprised. I was just crying through it. So, and I was playing my auto harp, and I figured out a while ago that if I start to cry, I can actually just put the auto harp in front of my face. I can just stand and
That's
hold the auto harp.
brilliant.
And so I did that a couple times during the song. It's kind of great. Like all you see is a body and an auto harp and two hands on the instrument. It looks like an abstract piece of artwork.
Oh, and do the strings of the auto harp give a little vibrato to your voice if you're singing into it?
Well, that's true. It might. I'll give it a listen. I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I've been joining a contemplative practice every morning for Ukraine through my Shambhala organization in LA. So the international Shambhala group, we're doing a contemplative sitting practice every morning with Sangha members in Ukraine. And it's at 8:00 every morning. And we're doing sitting practice and then a practice called Tonglen, that's basically about like sending and receiving, where you put in your mind someone close to you and you breathe in pain or stress, and you breathe out peace. And it's like an exchanging of energy, transformation. So we do that for about 10 minutes, and then we sit for 5. And then they open the room for people to talk with the members in Ukraine and how they're doing. And it's really been something. But they're doing a musical fundraiser on Saturday, and I'm recording tomorrow on Zoom at my house a song that a friend of mine and I wrote in the early 90s. She's coming out from LA, and we're going to record it together in my office on Zoom with a fellow, from this group. And it'll play Saturday morning. So I don't think I'll be crying through that. So we adapted Home on the Range with some images from our Buddhist teachings. And Home on the Range is in public domain, thank God. So we'll be singing Home on the Range. But anyway, so any news on the SoCal group swap?
No,
No?
I haven't followed up on our
Yeah,
conversation.
me neither. And no spring concert,
No,
right?
no spring concert. So, I have a story I want to tell.
Oh, good. Save us.
This will be my first time. And I got the story from Ready to Tell,
Tell tales. Yeah.
published by David Holt and Bill Mooney.
Yeah.
And the story I want to tell is one from Judith Black. And it's a Jewish story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called The King's Child. Once there was a king whose sorrow was unending, even though his queen loved him, and he was worshipped by his subjects and feared by his enemies, he still did not have a child. Who's going to carry on my work, my power, my memory? I need an heir. So the king and queen decided to offer a reward to anyone that could come up with a cure or an idea that would help them have a child. Many tried and many died, and the king and queen were still in great sorrow. Well, one cold day, a wise old woman came to the king's court, and she told him that if he would follow her directions, it would solve his problem. And the king was excited. He said, well, what do I need to do? And she said, well, right now, there is a big problem in the kingdom. There is no method or plan to dispose of human waste so that it does not get mixed up with other water, and is causing many people to be sick and die. What you need to do is to have your army dig canals through the cities and the villages to carry the human waste away to a separate place, while they have canals that bring in fresh water from another place for drinking and cooking. And the king said, how is that going to help me have a child? Oh, it will, Your Majesty, it will. It'll solve your problem. And she spoke with such authority that he went ahead and did that. And what happened was, it really did reduce the sickness and disease and people dying from the contamination of the water, which was a good thing. However, after a couple months, the king and queen had not conceived a child. And he called the old woman back and said, you lied to me. We did not have a child. And quickly, The old woman said, well, that's because there's more to my plan. That was just the first part. What you need to do next is take your land that you own and offer plots of land to all the peasants and serfs so they will have their own land to farm and can provide for their families. Why should I do that? Give up my own land? Well, you do want to have one to carry on your memory, don't you? And so the king listened to her. She seemed to be a voice of authority, and he did that. He divided up his land, and every peasant and serf had a plot of land to farm on, and they prospered, which was a good thing. But after several months and no child on the way, the king was very angry. And he called the old woman back and said, you lied to me again. It didn't work at all. Ah, Your Majesty, there's one more piece to the plan. And that will do it. That will ensure your memories will carry on forever. And you will have an heir. Okay, what is the final piece? And she said, well, what you need to do is disband your army and take away the motivation for you waging all these wars on your borders. What? My army? You're crazy. I'm firm on this, Your Majesty. It is the final piece. And so he did that. He disbanded the army, and it worked. For the first time in memory, young men were not in the army. They were behind a plow or an anvil with their families. And everyone was very happy about that. And the children could play safely close to the border. They were not being attacked. The king had made treaties, peace treaties with all the neighboring kingdoms before disbanding his army, which is what the woman had advised him to do. And it worked. However, after a couple months, half a year, a whole year went by, still no child. The king was furious. He had a gallows built in the throne room so he could watch her be hanged. And he summoned her to the throne room. And she came in, and he said, now you are going to die. Do you have anything to say? The old woman looked out a window, and she spoke softly. Your Majesty, the queen was barren, but so was your kingdom barren too. Look out the window now. What do you see? You have given your people health, wealth, and the security of peace, where before they were dying of sickness and starvation and fighting wars. You have made their lives better, and they speak of you with reverence. Your name is spoken with honor, and it is bestowed upon the children of your subjects, and it will be passed on to their children and their children's children. You, through your acts of love and kindness, are now the father of, and will be remembered by, all the children of your kingdom. And the king's eyes followed the gaze of the woman out the window, and he looked out on his kingdom, and indeed, it had changed for the better. And he realized that she was right, that now his children would number with the stars, and he would be remembered forever.
Wow, that's gorgeous.
Isn't that a great story?
Yeah. That's a good story for the times.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh,
I once heard Judith Black in person at the Sierra Storytelling Festival.
yeah.
And she told an environmental story that just blew me away.
Mm-hmm.
I was very impressed.
Well, she was very much a part of Earth Up, the NSN conference that just was in play this last weekend.
Right.
And I attended a number of the events, and they've extended the registration window for that so that people can register and watch the recordings. But
Mhm.
it was an amazing conference. There were just fabulous workshops and concerts and stories, and time for participants to think about things and process things in breakout rooms. It was awesome.
You think it's worth listening to the recordings?
I think so. It was $100 for the whole weekend.
Mhm.
And I had no business spending that kind of money right now, but I put it on PayPal credit, so I have 6 months to pay it. $100. But I'm really glad I did, and it was just fantastic. And there were some sessions run by people outside of this country, which was really great. I also did that with the Northlands conference. That was like 3 weeks ago, and that just blew me away. That was just, and again, they had a registration, and when those recordings are ready, we'll be able to access them again. It was put on by the Northeast Storytelling Group.
Mhm.
It was amazing. I was blown away. It just felt like such a really well nurtured community. Megan Wells did the keynote. It's fabulous. It was just wonderful. So anyway, yeah, Judith. Judith has. I've always enjoyed her telling, and she just said a number of times that for herself, the way to work with what's happening in this country and in the world is to be an activist and to, spend her energy doing that are action related. She had just come off an 8-day fast,
Wow.
hunger fast. So
That's not something I'm willing to do.
I'm willing to do it, but I'd never pull it off. I love the idea of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm glad you were able to join us, Angela. I think I'm going to stop the recording.
okay.